I love that.
Good evening. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order for Monday, December 10th, 2018. And as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. Hearing nobody, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening.
They're not on.
Yeah, they are. They're on. They're on. Wanted to acknowledge the passing of a significant person here in the town of Harwich. I'm going to hand that over to Don, who knew him personally. I did not. Buddy Hall. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Julie. More bad news. Wanted to recognize the passing of Emulus Hall, better known to most of us as Buddy, this past weekend at the age of 95. I also wanted to say that we celebrate all the various Brooks brothers who in town, Caleb, whoever, who were founders, but right under our noses, equally big characters are passing away these past several years. Like many of his contemporaries, Buddy went to school here, and most of his friends grew up here too. He went to high school here, and when called upon, entered the service as a pilot during World War II, like Jimmy Marceline, Lonesome Joe Gomes, and many others of his generation. He came back home and did many remarkable things. He was a Mason. He chaired the planning board in the 70s when zoning was created in East Harwich. He was a constable. He was incredibly generous to the town of Harwich, though he never really wanted anyone to know much about it. And of course, there was Buddy's go-karts, beloved by generations of kids. As we pivot to a town of part-time residents and retirees, we would all do well to remember the ever-dwindling stock of home folks who made this town the way it is. Our condolences to Sandra Hall, and safe journey, Buddy.
Thank you, Don. I would also like to ask that we have a moment of silence in honor of Buddy Hall and also a lost firefighter in Worcester on behalf of our dedication to the hard work that firefighters do every day and in honor of our own fire department. So if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. Weekly briefing. Is there anybody here for weekly briefing? Okay. Anybody for public comments and announcements? Good evening, Leo.
Hi, Madam Chair, thank you. I did not realize this was on your agenda because I printed it off. I did not print it off, I just got it when I walked in, but I noticed that you're going to be talking later on the new business about the representative to the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. I know we can't discuss it here because it's not on the agenda, but that's why I rise during public comments. I just want to let the board know that I am currently the president of Cape and Islands, Cape and Vineyard, CVEC. And I will be losing my seat, my appointment there in January because of my loss of the election as the county commissioner. And I know that your representative has stepped down, and I'm here to tell you that I will be, if you would like me to, officially file a public service form with you. Okay. But I would respectfully request that the Board of Selectmen consider appointing me as the Harwich representative, and I will tell you publicly that the board, certainly the president of CVEC, the executive director of CVEC, Liz Argo, would be thrilled if you were to do that. I've been working on a number of different issues as the president. We have a battery installation going on in Yarmouth, which is coming to fruition. We have round 4, which has just begun, and a lot of contracts going out that I've been working diligently with her on. and I would certainly like to stay at least to the completion of those. So if your seat expires in June even, I would graciously accept and ask that you guys either consider putting me on just even for that short time so I can finish up the work that I've been doing there as the president. And certainly if there is another person interested, I'd be very happy to have them come to the meetings and join us in the meetings and although not be able to vote, but certainly participate so that when I'm ready to step down, you'll have somebody basically trained and ready to go right in. So if you could consider that, I would very much appreciate it. And if I have to fill out a form and have an interview, that's okay too. But whatever you want me to do.
Thank you,
Thank
Larry.
you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comments and announcements? Evening, Larry.
Hi. I think Leo would be an excellent choice to continue for a while. He knows the workings of CVEC and all the issues thoroughly, does his homework. Excellent choice.
Great, thank you, Larry. Anybody else for public comments and announcements? We'll move on to the consent agenda. Oh, excuse me.
Madam Chair, can I ask that the license renewals just be put in new business?
Yes, sorry. We'll take those out. Ed?
I'd like to present the consent agenda and move adoption of the items thereon, including a vote to approve the request by Eversource to install a new pole to provide service to 175 South Street. Vote to approve the use of the Caleb Chase Fund in the amount of $431.55. A vote to approve the use of the Caleb Chase Fund in the amount of $679.23. And a vote to approve the use of the Caleb Chase Fund in the amount of $700. Items E and F will take up separately, and to item to approve application for road race by Cape Cod Athletic Club for January 20th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearings and
No.
oh,
E and F.
what? Oh, sorry, E and F, I apologize. Go ahead, I'm gonna talk about, he wanted to
Nope.
do them under new business.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
Oh,
we were
okay.
gonna do it under new business.
It's nothing big, it's just,
Yeah.
don't
No, no,
like the
that you
idea of-
asked for it under
Okay,
new
yeah.
business, so that's why I was moving on.
Thank you.
Public hearings and presentations, annual meetings, Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee. Is anybody here from?
Yeah,
Oh,
Matt?
oh, sorry, I couldn't, the podium was blocking you, Matt.
Hiding. Good evening. My name is Matt Hart. I'm the chairman of the Disability Committee, which is called the Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee. Good evening, members of the board. The mission of the Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee is to advise and guide the town of Harwich and the general public regarding issues of disability, accessibility, as ordered by the Americans with Disability Act and the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. Also, the Harwich Accessible Rights Commission provides information and referral services to residents and visitors. In the process, we work closely with the local Harwich churches, elderly services, and the Veterans Agent. The definition of an elderly or senior citizen to HUD is anyone over the age of 62 and a half years of age, which is a little bit different than some where they use 65. The percentage and per capita in Harwich is one of the highest in the state, and it is growing. We're becoming a resident for people my age and older. In 2014, looking at the non-institutionalized Harwich population, 12% were individuals that claimed some type of disability. This was up from 9.3% in 2000. Today the population is about 12,220, but it can swell to 3 times that amount in the summer. Of those Harwich residents that are under 18 years of age, 4.8% claim a disability. In the 18 to 64 age group of Harwich residents, 10.7% claim a disability. Regarding the Harwich population of persons 62 years of age or older, which is over 31% of the residents in Harwich. 12% of those in that age group claim some type of disability. These levels of over 12% of disability, particularly of those seniors, represent a significant need for full requirements of the ADA-approved accessibility within the entire Harwich community. These percentages are higher in comparison to the 9.3% level of the state. The Harwich Accessibility Rights Committee, HARC as we call it, currently has 4 active members. We have openings for 1 full-time member and 2 alternate members. These present members have been active, professional, and an asset to the town of Harwich. Because so many Harwich residents go south in the winter, those 2 alternate members are a critical element in maintaining a meeting quorum. During the last year, 5 of the monthly meetings were canceled due to a lack of a quorum. Recently, the Harwich Accessible Rights Committee, HARC, participated in an ADA self-evaluation and transition engagement. This is required in every community in the United States. As a result of this evaluation that was conducted by an ADA certified consultant, HARC was made aware of 271 ADA violation regulations in Harwich. As a result, the town of Harwich is not ADA compliant yet. This recent town of Harwich ADA self-evaluation and transition consulting engagement identified these municipal improvement areas and the transition requirements. Arrangements are being made to correct and upgrade these violations. There's an estimated cost of around $200,000 in financial obligation and the physical provisioning with regard to the follow-up transition process to repair and improve the 271 identified ADA areas during the next 3 years. In addition, because of the visibility of the ADA process, various Harwich residents have informed HARC membership of other areas of accessibility concern. Now, before I get into those, the violations, a lot of them are signage and they're minor. Fortunately, they didn't find anything that was overly critical. Some of them are a little bit difficult because they might require a change of plumbing and things like that. So estimating the price or the cost of doing this work will really be found out when they dig into it. As an example, this building became a town hall 1 year before the ADA regulations went through. So we're going to find a lot of minor violations, well, they did in this building and the former high school. The rest are around the town, and we have all that information. Some of the comments that I received at meetings that I wanted to bring up is the condition of the town's sidewalks, crosswalks, and lack of traffic lights, especially in Harwich Center, are a severe safety, accessibility, and public access concern. I'm working with the town administrator, Chris, and our committee. We're going after a grant to try and help correct that, replace the sidewalks in Harwich. Now, there's another committee that we were just at a meeting on. What I'm trying to do with the town's help is get the money first and then plan from that, as opposed to the normal way we do things. We also have a grant that's already been submitted for $250,000 to try and get a grant to take care of all those transition costs instead of doing it in 3 years, getting it done in 1 year. So those will be pending. The first grant was submitted 2 months ago, and we're going to hear the results in that probably in January. The second is this lack of sidewalk between Bank Street and Saquatucket Harbor has been a dangerous pedestrian ADA safety situation for years. The addition of the medical center is to an already busy harbor only increases the need for the sidewalks, crosswalks, and at that crosswalk, we're recommending a traffic light, similar to what you have by the Catholic Church. The lack of the 2 motion picture screens at the community center for projection of the town meetings written dialogue for those residents with hearing aid and vision issues along with the rest of us in the rear of the auditorium is a critical ADA information issue. The request and a suggestion by those individuals for hearing issues have been made for a small section of seats, maybe in the front row, outfitted with headphones connected to the town meeting sound system to make the town meeting ADA compliant. Now that early voting for state and federal regulations is allowed in Massachusetts, provisioning for visually impaired at the town clerk's office area is also now required by the state and the ADA requirements. The town of Harwich already has the equipment for this visual impaired process that is available in the voting areas during elections, and a video is available to televise prior to the elections to demonstrate the operational capabilities and use of specialized voting devices that any Harwich voter can use. It's quite a process to set this up. Now, working with Anita, the other thing that she's done, which is legal, is an individual can come in and request a ballot. The problem with this visual system, say that I were to go up there, the first thing I have to do by regulation is fill out a form. Now, this is kind of an oxymoron to me. If I can't see, how can I fill in the form? For a cost of 30 cents to the town, we can send a ballot to these people if they request it. Now, we've had some people that want to use the system, and we've had a couple of incidents where there was a problem because the person couldn't or didn't want to fill out the form. They have to fill out a form, just like we all do. You go up and say, okay, here's my name, here's where I live. You then would say, I have a vision problem. You would be given this other document that you have to fill out and put it in an envelope, and then you go to the machine and you vote. Now, anybody can do that. You don't have to have a visual problem. But what would be far simpler for a lot of people, especially when there are items beyond just a simple ballot, is to have that ballot in their home, read it, and then sent back, just like an absentee ballot. That's also now available to all the citizens. In addition to being an absentee ballot, Massachusetts is considering allowing local accessibility of residents and disabled residents to request their ballots, and they're mailed to them. So it's now legal, and Anita Doucette is in the process of allowing that. So she would have some ballots that came in, say, a person in the military, somebody else might request an absentee ballot, and this, if somebody who had a problem with vision or accessibility, they can also do this now, and they would all be collected in the same process. I would like to invite any and all interested individuals that would like to participate in meetings, along with those interested in the opportunities and responsibilities to become active HARC members of the committee, to join us. Do I have any questions? Other than that, I'm finished.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for all of the hard work you've put in over the course of, especially this year, you've done an awful lot. So let me open it up to the board. Larry, do you have any questions?
No, I agree. Thanks very much for all your effort and your hard work. And I'd repeat what Matt's final statement. We need more members.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Matt, how many members do you have right now, active members?
There's 4 members.
Okay.
You can have 5 full-time members, but it's the alternates. I mean, we found out in the waterways, it's a big asset that if you have somebody that's the person, but you want somebody that's coming to the meetings so they can vote correctly.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank
Thanks for
you
bringing
very
this
much.
forward.
Ed, Don?
Thank you, Matt.
Matt, could you come back to the?
Are there any members not showing up to meetings, or?
Not, well, I know in advance that, for instance, in December,
you know or
they're
don't
gone.
know, are there any
They're
members
not
not-
going to be here. So that's not that they're absent because that they've been neglecting. It's because they have other things that they have commitments.
I understand, but are there people who aren't showing up was the question.
No. When we have the meetings, we're getting the 4.
Okay. I would like to note this has been a committee that had fallen completely apart, and Matt has put it back together with a lot of zeal and energy, so I really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Now we have the Real Estate and Open Space Committee. Good evening.
Hi, Kathy Green, Chair of Real Estate Open Space. Good evening.
Good evening.
I know that you received my annual report. We have membership of 6 out of 7 right now with 1 vacancy. If I can take a minute to recognize 2 members of the Real Estate and Open Space Committee that passed away this year. Bob Thomas, who served as vice chair for several years, and John Preston, who served as our clerk for several years. And both were very strong advocates for open space protection, and we just wanted to acknowledge our appreciation for their service.
Thank you.
Currently, we're working very closely with Conservation, Water, and the Housing Committee to formalize a list of properties, either town-owned, or in tax lien, or owners unknown, and making recommendations for their uses.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to make a note that recently I had to prepare a report for the Community Preservation Coalition and the Trusts for Public Lands that asks us to make a comprehensive list of land purchases with CPA funds since 2006. I just wanted to let you know that since 2006, we've protected over 121 acres of land in Harwich. 39 of those acres were in this past year of 2018.
Great. It's nice to hear. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Don?
No, I appreciate your efforts, and it's a complex thing that you guys do, because essentially the charge runs the gamut for general purpose town use, affordable housing, protecting those things that are precious pieces of land, and big job. Appreciate it.
Ed?
Nope. Thank you, Kathy.
Michael?
Thank you, Kathy.
No, thanks to you and the rest of the committee.
All right.
Your work.
Thank you
I
very
want to
much.
say thank you to Amy Usowski and Michael Lack for their continued help.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yep.
How come you two have cosigns? Are you really that, Amy's? Not to pick on you, Amy, but
And now we have a public hearing for the building department fee amendments. And do we need to read the public?
Yeah, we do.
I think I'm gonna have Ray do the.
Oh,
read
great,
on this.
okay, thank you.
We need to.
He's,
Open the public hearing.
yeah, he's gonna open, yeah, is he gonna read the notice, Chris? The public hearing notice?
no.
Yeah, we
Ed
do
will.
need to read the.
Yeah, that's what I was just
I'm sorry.
saying. Yeah, I know, but I thought he
I
said
thought
that
you
he
were
was gonna have him.
I don't normally read
The
the.
Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, December 10th, 2018, no earlier than 6:30 PM during the regular scheduled meeting. This hearing will be held in the Don B. Griffin Room located at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of reviewing proposed amendments to the building department fees. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend the public hearing and provide information and testimony relevant to these proposals. And additional information is available at the Office of the Town Administrator, signed the Harwich Board of Selectmen, published in the Cape Cod Chronicle, November 22nd, 2018.
Thank you, Ed. Good evening, Ray.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, I'm Ray Chesley, Building Commissioner, and I'm back here tonight with some more information as a follow-up to our previous meetings with you. And there should be in your packet a 3-page summary of some further work that I did based on the comments that I heard from the board. And the first page is basically a workup of the time and material cost that the town expends on building permits and regulating the building code, enforcing the building code. It boils down to, I think there's a misnomer that the revenue that the town receives covers the cost, or at least a major cost of the building department. And I think looking at this whole thing, that's not quite true. And so based on the figures that I did, we had a revenue last year in FY18 of $282,646.20. And that's from building code, building permit fees only. That's no no other fees. And we had a cost to run the building department, or at least a budget to run the building department in FY 218 of $614,552.68. So there's quite a big difference between what our revenue was and what the cost is to run the department. I looked at the split between running the department for building permit activities and building code activities, and then for safety activities and zoning and that type of thing that's specific to the town. And roughly, I estimated it's about a 15% town cost, and about 85% of our cost is to actually run and enforce the building code, the state building code. The second page of the report that I did analyzes different types of building permits that we actually have issued here in the town in that particular time frame. And that analyzes what we actually charged for that particular permit and what the cost to the town was for that permit. And in some cases, you'll see that the town actually made some money on some of those permits, and in a lot of cases, they don't make money. It costs the town to actually do that work. So the long and short of it is that I think an increase but at least it's a good step forward.
Thank you, Ray. Chris?
Madam Chair, if I could just, I want to elaborate. I think Ray did a nice job in terms of putting the numbers together. He may have misspoke a little bit, that the 85% is permit related. So when we figured out what the work in the office was, about 85% is permit related or fee related, and 15% is enforcement, so not something that would generate a fee attached. So when we looked at that component, and what we were trying to do is, obviously under mass law and practice, we're entitled to try to recover some of those costs. So what Ray did was to put together a plan here to head in the direction of recovering those costs. We don't do full recovery, we're just doing a partial or more partial recovery. One other thing, and I appreciate the board's input at the last session, that we did two things in response to kind of what I heard as board concerns. We did have just a couple categories where we had commercial buildings and new dwellings and additions. We've tried to add a little bit of categories to those to make that a little bit more reflective of the work that Ray and his folks do. So we have additions, alterations, and finished basements at a little different pricing schedule per foot, and then unconditioned accessory structures at a different level as well, to try to take into recognition that some elements are more involved than others. And then, as Ray had pointed out, we thought that just to kind of give some examples of the type of what the existing fee is and then the new fee schedule. So he took some examples of actual construction that has been done. We kind of kept the names out just to not specifically identify anyone or any specific buildings, but to put those in. And, you know, the interesting part to this is when you take a look at, you could have the same home be built or same addition, and when you have a contractor doing the work and very organized, the level of effort may be not as great as a homeowner that's trying to do things on their own and relies upon staff for a lot of input and so on. So, you know, these are just snapshots. So when people see, oh, one fee is we're making money and another fee we're losing money, what we're trying to do is look at the overall picture and try to come closer to breaking even. And I think really the nutshell of this is right now the taxpayers overall are subsidizing a lot of the operation, and we're trying to just rebalance that and go from taxpayer funded through the tax base to fee-driven funding for the operation.
Thank you, Chris. Questions from the board? Larry?
Thank you, Ray. You're right, we've heard this before. And it makes some sense. I know I argued against it. Let me ask you just a process question, if I may, Ray. I know in the past, I think for Amy's time more than now, but we spent a fair amount of time with people submitting incomplete forms and having to go back into cycles. And that brings me into the process of what I think what Chris referred to it. Do you think, or should we, let me phrase it differently. Can we be doing more to educate people on filling out the forms correctly the first time? More educational on the web? Is Acela helping us out in terms of reducing the time that you spend on either hand-holding someone filling out the right permit form or sending it back and asking for corrections? Is there more process, computer activity that would make us more efficient is my question.
Well, I think there is room for improvement with Acela, and we are trying to work on that. It's a little bit different for the building department because we're dealing with the public, and we're not dealing with professionals at every permit. Usually the professionals have it all organized, know what's required of forms, and we get complete information from them. But there still is a process with people that maybe are doing this for the first time, or a homeowner that's, puts an addition on every 10 years or something, and isn't familiar with the whole process. We do have a lot of signage.
We'd probably absorb it. It would be absorbed by the fee increase to try to accomplish.
Fees, this is being paid for by taxpayers because taxpayers are the ones pulling the permits. So
Addition or
I believe it was 2011. They have
public hearing. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak, to comment on any of the fees? Nobody? You guys are not giving me a minute. I'd like to close the public hearing, and Ed, thank you. Would you make a motion?
Yes, I would move that we approve the fee increases as recommended by the building commissioner in his presentation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in,
No, go ahead.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye, 4-1. I just, for the general public, in terms of, we shouldn't implement it tomorrow, so I just didn't know if Ray had a suggestion for the date that the implementation would be effective. Just thinking maybe April 1st, just to have 3 months' notice for people.
Well,
And I
my own
recognize the
feeling is, we have maybe a couple of months, but the sooner the better, because we're losing money here.
Right.
Madam Chair,
Ed?
I move that we make the fee increases we've just voted effective February 1st.
Okay.
That's the original motion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the original.
That's what I thought I seconded.
Okay.
All right, we'll go with that.
Thank you.
Well, and one of the comments that Mr. McCaskill did make was that this is a substantial increase, and it's a problem that occurs when we don't review our fees on a much more regular basis than every 7 years. You go that long between, all the costs go up, the fees stay the same, it's going to be a big jump as opposed to doing it every year or every 2 years.
Thank you, Ed. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. But being mindful of that, I'm kind of in between Michael and Ed. This shouldn't preclude us from looking into any kind of productivity increases that we could, launch as we go along, because everything doesn't have to be based on, we've always done it this way, and this is how much it costs to do it that way. We find a better way, we adopt a better way.
Right.
I would agree with that, and I also think we need to challenge regulations when we see them, if they aren't really productive, because we seem it's easy to always pass regulations, and I'm not sure that, at least we should be challenging them when we can, or if we don't think they're appropriate.
Well, and I also think, you know, as we look at our IT situation, and, you know, I think some of those problems on online permitting, you know, currently are probably based on some of the IT improvements we need, I would think, in terms of uploading large files and structural plans and things of that nature. So.
I do think one thing that we have with the Acela is on the Board of Health side, they did do informational tutorials for people so they can watch a video of how to walk through to try to do a little bit of that hand-holding type of operation. And we've had some discussions internally to do something similar on the building side. I do think, I mean, we're in a customer service business, and I think there will be certain folks that will want to have that service, and we don't want to preclude people from having that, but we would like to have more people utilize the online technology, obviously.
Right. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so we will move to the joint meeting with the Finance Committee, the Town Administrator and Capital Outlay Committee to submit the 7-year capital outlay plan to the Finance Committee. Do you want, are you going to come up? Or no?
We have a quorum, we call the Finance Committee to order.
Yeah, so, thank you. Well, do,
I don't think we have enough seats for
All right, well,
both committees, so if the
okay,
committees are
well,
comfortable in the...
we'll leave you sitting there.
There's a couple of seats up here.
I don't, if you want, if the chairs want to come up, it's up to you. You want to stay in the audience, okay? Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to the town charter, there is a requirement that the town administrator submit a 7-year capital outlay plan to a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and Capital Outlay Committee. I just want to say, I've had a good partnership in my time that I've been here with the Capital Outlay Committee. I think they're a very professional group, and it really is a pleasure to work with them. They put me through the paces and make sure we get information, and that's part of the process, and I appreciate their diligence in doing that. I thought what I would do this evening is to kind of just run through kind of the larger items. There is also, just for folks that do like to follow along, on Monday, January 7th, which will be right after the holidays, by charter, there is a requirement for the Selectmen, Finance Committee, and Capital Outlay Committee to hold a joint public hearing on the submitted capital outlay plan. So I think what the charter has envisioned is to kind of give people upcoming attractions of what's in the capital plan this evening, and then if there's a lot of feedback or opportunity for the general public to come in and have comments or questions on the specific items. I think that's really what the point of the January 7th meeting is, but that's my understanding of the way that charter works. I do have the material up on the screen. There are a lot of requests, so what I will focus on is the ones in which Town Administration and the Capital Outlay Committee have voted recommendations, and I think what I will do also is just focus on those that are over the $50,000 threshold. That is a requirement of the charter. This document does have all the elements on there because I have to, as we develop the budget, everything needs to be accounted for, so I use this document as a kind of a comprehensive tool. We will use a simplified version. There is a simplified version that the Finance Committee has put together of just the $50,000 and above. So we probably will put both items, one in the section of the warrant that deals with the capital plan that addresses the $50,000 and over, and then I would recommend one of the appendixes has this, because I do link this also to every warrant article that will be voted on at town meeting. So if people want to follow along, they have the ability to do so. I'm just going to go kind of right down the list here. This is alphabetized, so with the board's indulgences, I'll try to go through this as timely as I can. The first one is under administration, the demolition and remediation of 203 Bank Street and parking lot improvements. This really just calls for the demolition of the building. If I remember, about $30,000 is hazardous materials abatement, and then 30,000 is for the actual demolition of the building. The idea would be to leave it as a parking lot, and consistent with town meeting action would be to have the part of that site be sold off for conservation purposes. Town meeting has already voted that, so this is just really the funding to prep the site. The other two items under there are in the operating budget, so I will not get into those. On the cemetery department, the pet burial ground completion, folks probably remember last year there was work done on the pet burial ground in terms of the walkway. That work was stopped when the funding source was questioned. So it's $57,000 to come back in and complete. That is really a initial preliminary number, and that's not something that we've bid out yet, but we would need to bid that out. The funding source on that is to have it come from the pet revolving account.
Tom, you had a comment?
Yep. Madam Chair, for the purposes of the plan, we already expended a substantial amount of money that we transferred from other sources. And I feel very strongly that that money should wind up also being generated by the revolving fund sales, because it wasn't right that that went from a direct account.
Yeah, actually, great point. I will include that in the notes, that money that was utilized from an account that it should probably not have been taken from. I think the reimbursement should be for the entire project cost. So we'll make a note of that as a adjustment.
Thank you.
Thank you. On the next one is, there is an arboretum project. This is more just for upcoming, one of the things about a capital plan is really for development of future projects. And this would be an arboretum project for mapping and software, with the idea that we would create through the Cemetery Commission a arboretum at one of our cemetery sites. And then the anticipation would be that to put the arboretum into practice, that there'll be an additional appropriation that will come afterwards. Right now, just for planning purposes, $100,000 is in there. On the next item, and I'm skipping over, the community center doesn't have any requests, so we don't have anything in there for this year. And some of their requests are actually included in facility maintenance. Conservation does have a CPC application in for $100,000 for shore stabilization, the revetment at the end of Red River Beach to prevent some erosion. That $100,000 just for definition, or not for definition, but for elaboration. $30,000 would be for the engineering work or the permitting work that would go with it, and about $70,000 to do the work. So just to give people a flavor. But if you ever get on Red River Beach, there's a turnaround section at the end, and you can see the washout. It is something that's fairly obvious in terms of issues. On engineering, MS4 is municipal surface drainage. This one is $40,000 out of the operating budget, but it does have about $300,000 afterwards. These are changing out some of the storm drains that go into environmentally sensitive areas. Currently, some of the storm drains just kind of catch material and it goes right into the environment. These mechanisms would be to change those drains and have them actually grab contaminants before they make it into the environment. And then, actually that's under 50. On the facility maintenance, really the one that they have on there, the ADA improvements had been talked about earlier, so I'm not going to elaborate too much on that, other than we have the ADA numbers came in on the study. That is, one thing I will say about that is it's kind of focused on the facilities and not necessarily on the sidewalk network. So we are looking at other elements for sidewalks. And then on the highway barn metal roof installation.
Sorry, Chris.
I'm sorry.
Can you come up to, excuse me, the microphone?
Is there any way, so everyone can understand, we're going up and down. Can we move this left to right? What you're seeing is the recommendation of the town administrator. The lighter green is the capital outlay committee's vote, and the first white column is what is going to be in the year
Year 20 and
2020,
beyond.
so that you can, the three, dark green, light green, white. Those are the important columns.
Thank you.
Probably more important than the verbiage on the left. No problem.
I don't have the real Excel thing.
Don't worry, no, you're doing a good job. You're okay.
So on the highway barn metal roof insulation, that is replacement of the roof. That roof was done, I would say, a decade before, more than a decade old, and that is in need of replacement. People may notice that we did do the side panels. This is actually the roof work now and includes insulation. This is a building that is occupied by personnel. Under the fire department, just a, that's under 50,000. There is a auto extrication equipment that is about $100,000. We anticipate funding $5,000 from free cash and then $95,000 from a grant. Sometimes we have to take advantage of the grant pool that's available. Some of these grant agencies tend to focus on different areas of concern as they come up. So we do modify this to reflect the grant environment to see about the viability of getting some grants. So that's auto extrication equipment. That's $100,000. On the pumper truck replacement schedule, kind of due to the amount of free cash that we have available, we had a pretty good year for free cash, but we do have other obligations. So we're looking at doing the pumper truck as $600,000 and doing a debt exclusion. Conceivably adopting a policy, if you would, or a practice similar to what we do with the roadway, where we have a certain amount that comes on each year and a certain amount that goes off, so there's a consistent amount. So we are going to look at that to see if we're able to have that be in there. So the debt exclusion for the $600,000, with the idea that you can see in FY24, there's $1.4 million for a ladder truck replacement, to see if we could build up, if you would, a certain amount of funding that then would be able to put towards the ladder truck in later years. Under the golf operation, most of these, actually all the golf operations are paid by golf funds, whether it's the golf improvement funds or the golf budget. So I just want to kind of highlight that these are fee-driven related. Bunker renovations are at $75,000. A new cart path in different locations at $50,000, and the various mowing equipment per lease is $87,000, and that is a 5-year lease for that equipment. In terms of the harbor master, the Wixon Dock landside improvements at $70,000. This is an area where the dock itself is in pretty good shape, but the area that people park at, it's really in terrible shape. The water comes down a street and just goes right into the environment. This would create a parking area and be able to catch that water, so that we would not putting any potential materials from the street right into the water system. And then Allen Harbor Jetty reconstruction. These are kind of designed for the concept would be to do a study and design, or do the permitting and design, and then construction. So this is $57,000 to do the study and the design, if you would, and permitting. And then we have a placeholder in there. After looking at the project, it could be fairly substantial, the amount of work that needs to be done. The placeholder we have in there is $2 million. And we'll have to see what the estimate comes back from that design. But that would be funded, the $2 million would be funded in FY21. On the library, a lot of folks probably remember the library project that was done was to do improvements to the painting. There was also another component of that initial report that had sidewalk repair and streetscape. That estimate has been adjusted for inflation and now is at $90,000 to kind of do the brickwork around the building to make it more, actually the sidewalk work itself, to make that building a little bit more appealing to be able to come in and out of. and as well as with ADA, more accessible because of the bricks are not really something that is really accessible. Natural Resources has things in the out year. Planning, we have the Housing Trust, which is $300,000 for the trust and then $40,000 for the part-time consultant. That is a funding request that goes to CPC. I am going on Thursday night to CPC to just do an update on that project if anyone chooses to join me. Just to put in a plug. And then on the local comprehensive plan, that is $200,000 for the planning money for that. We do anticipate that we probably will get some grants from the county or some elements of the local comprehensive plan maybe already accomplished from some of the previous efforts. So we do hope that that number gets reduced down as we move forward into the process. The police department has a few items, but they are below the $50,000 threshold. Public Works, as I alluded to earlier, their 5-year road maintenance plan. The town has about $1.4 million that we put towards maintaining the roadways throughout the community, and the idea behind that is to do a debt exclusion where we do that $700,000 pay off a certain amount over a 5-year cycle. So we don't negatively impact the tax structure. So we pay that off over 5 years. And then we do get $700,000 in Chapter 90. Chapter 90 is the gas tax that the federal government collects for the feds, and then the state also collects, and the state gives us that money back in the form of what's called Chapter 90, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 90. So that's about $700,000. We do have Lower County Road Public Works that put in for Lower County Road, the maintenance. This is maintenance work because a TIP project would require potential land takings and a widening of that road. The recommendation is to have that in-house. That would be a debt exclusion. That was an item that was delayed from last year. And I think we have the consultant coming in on the 17th to do an overview for the board of that project. So we will have additional material coming in. And then DPW operates a lot of large equipment, and that vehicle fleet does need to be updated as we go. You know, a lot of hard miles or hard hours that are on these pieces of equipment. So he has a mobile lifting system for large vehicles. When large vehicles such as fire trucks break down, he would like to have the ability to have portable lifts to be able to lift them and do work when necessary. Ford F-350 dump truck at $80,000. The two C&D trailers at $75,000 each, so that's $150,000. And then Johnson sweeper body and Pony motor. So this is part of the sweeper system, not the entirety of the sweeper system at $125,000. On Rec and Youth, we are looking at, he has a couple of CPC projects. I'm not going to do anything under the 50, but $112,000 funded from free cash for the Pleasant Road Beach parking lot, paving, and overlay. Red River Beach was done 2 years ago. Bank Street is being done this year, and Pleasant Road Beach is the next one they have on their plan to overhaul the parking. Sand Pond, restrooms and playground improvements, $125,000. That's request to CPC. And then also White House field scoreboard replacement is $55,000. One thing in the charter, it says that the Capital Planning Committee or Capital Outlay Committee is to look at all items over $50,000, and the funding source is really not necessarily relevant. The one thing on CPC presents a little bit of a challenge because it should be on the plan, but CPC is really funded on a year-to-year basis, so they don't necessarily do planning for the longer term. So you see most of the CPC funding is for the 1 year. Wastewater, just in here, the outreach coordinator, there is some funding in for that for this year. I would like to just kind of put a placeholder here that the DHY Community Partnership, we're having discussions obviously on that work, and they are looking at resequencing, and there is potential that something could come for this town meeting or next town meeting, the 2020 town meeting, that would ask for our contribution towards the design and construction of a plant to be located in the town of Dennis. I just want to kind of disclose that that could come as early as this town meeting, but potentially also could be in the May of 2020 town meeting. Hopefully I'm not talking out of school too much with these two.
They're public meetings. Madam Chair?
Sorry, yeah.
While we're on that one subject, I don't want to diminish that position by just calling an outreach coordinator, particularly based on everything we've been hearing. It's really going to be a project coordinator.
Right, and that's what we're working on now.
Yeah, I didn't update the title. We have had a title change that we're looking at now, so I'll put that
It's more
in.
fundamental. I mean, with input that Ed had and that Larry had, it's to talk to people, it's to document what we're doing, it's to plan it out. And I might add, based on what I do know about the DHY system at this point, the wastewater part of that's in another town, but all the pipes and the collectors are going to be in this town. So we're going to be facing the exact same issues and jurisdictions and who it is that does what as that gets sequenced. So it becomes really important to be doing this coherently.
I couldn't agree more. In terms of, so those were the two items in the wastewater area. On the water department, he has 4 requests in. I do want to comment on one of these, Pleasant Lake tank. The fill pipe replacement is to come from retained earnings at $300,000. Then he has a T1 generator at the main treatment facility for $65,000, and purchase a John Deere 35D tractor for $64,000, and then 2019 Ford Super Duty F550 to replace the truck body, including body, at $76,000. I did have a conversation just this afternoon with Dan Pelletier, our water superintendent. On this past Friday, we had a 16-inch water main break on Lothrop Ave. They are very concerned, or the superintendent is very concerned, that if that pipe has more significant failure, it could be pretty dramatic for the community. So it is located under a marsh, so it's literally iron pipe sitting in salt water, which is not really the best of circumstances. And so he was able to get that back online, but he is concerned that that probably should be replaced and have some of the high HDPE pipe, high polyurethylene pipe, basically the plastic pipe go in there, because that would not be subject to corrosion as much because of the salt water. But he is contemplating, and I did ask him if he could write something up on the capital plan, but he literally just had the water main break on Friday, and I think he now realizes that that's fairly extensive. He's thinking about putting in a request. He needs to bring that through his board first, but he is contemplating maybe delaying the Pleasant Lake tank project in order to be able to fund the work that has to be done on Lothrop Ave. So just a couple items that I just wanted to highlight that are on the form. Just that we do have the grand totals of the requests, the funding requests. I'm going to use the town administrator column only because that has everything, including the under 50,000. But it's 10,829 is the total request. On the free cash portion, it's just shy of 1.5 million. And the free cash was certified, actually I just got a revision to this the other day, was at 3,485,000. Like I said, I just got a revision to that the other day, so I have to make that revision. So we're using a portion of that free cash for capital, and then what we have been using, a portion of it for snow and ice, OPEB funding, and stabilization increases. So we have those built into this plan. We do have some charts. One chart that we added, which I just want to thank Carol Capola for doing the work on this, is a chart in the lower right-hand corner. Maybe you can zoom in on that, on the last page there. And then to your right. What this chart tries to show is, you know, I go through, okay, what's a debt exclusion? What does he mean by saying, well, things roll over and there's not as much cost impact? What this chart actually shows, and I think we need to update this based upon a little bit of the SRF funding and the 0%. I don't think I brought the updated version over. But here, if a home was valued at $350,000 and out of that $350,000 worth of value, if your tax bill was $2,500, then according to this model, what you see is in FY19, just over $400 is of that tax bill is related to debt exclusion, things that the taxpayers vote above and beyond. And the blue, or actually I guess on that screen it's more a green, is the tax impact. So the blue is what is already existing debt, and the dark gray, or the gray, is tax impact authorized but unissued. So projects that are done that are still working their way into becoming operational and borrowing money for. So you could see, so in FY19 we go from about 420 up to just shy of 500 for those. And then the tax impact analysis of the proposed debt from this year, what's being recommended this year, the debt exclusions, are shown in probably black on that screen, blue on the screen that I have. So we go from about 420 up to about probably 550 in terms of that. But you can see when you look over time that the green section is going down. So as existing debt goes down, and what we're attempting to do, administration is attempting to do with finance, is to, I call, feather it in. So as those dollars fall off, we backfill them with needed projects going forward. And you can see that the impact of that is we stay in that 550 range for a good portion of this. So we're not getting dramatic spikes by being able to fund things. So we do that based upon timing, how long we have debt service for, and we certainly do try to see what the market's doing, and if the market is going to have higher interest rates, we try to go out sooner to try to capture the marketplace as it exists now. But I think that was a new tool, and I just want to thank the Chris Harlow and the Capital Outlay Committee for kind of highlighting. You should have that in there to have it be more visual. People are visual learners, so putting those visual elements in, I think, was a great suggestion. And again, just a thank you to Carol Capola to help put all this material together.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments from the board? Nothing? Ed?
Well, just a question on one of the funding source under wastewater. The project manager, isn't that really across to the construction project?
Actually, on this was the OPM light, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, that we're looking at. So this would not necessarily be part of the overall construction. It wasn't anticipated when we did the overall construction. So this is an OPM effort that's been talked about by the board that we've recruited already.
Don?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I agree with where Ed's going. I mean, ultimately, if this is done right, it should pay for itself, because the alternative is things could spin out of control. I mean, you need a project manager who's external to the process to be able to control the process. I don't see anything wrong with that, because it's possible at that point we could throw another 100,000 into the impact fund that we started to fund last year, because we're not going to have enough fees in the beginning. We could do both, but only if we count that as part of the project.
And just to that point, I didn't highlight that, I probably should have. It says 75,000 coming from the operating budget and 25,000 coming from free cash. I just didn't want to be too presumptuous, but the operating budget that's referring to is the sewer budget. So that is what's kind of being contemplated. So we could look at the cost impact of Once we turn on the flow to Chatham, what our obligations to Chatham is, and we are working on that now to get a better sense for that, and then have money in that line item under salaries to cover some of these costs, or under contract services.
And that would be my point, and I'm pretty sure that's the point Ed was making. This is not an employee, it's a contract relationship, so I feel very comfortable with folding that into the project cost because it's associated with the project. It goes away when the project goes away. So you do that, you can also put some money into the reserve funding for, you know, the sewage account, that the enterprise fund, which will need to have money in it, and it's not going to have money in it on day one. We already gave it a gift last year, and I think that it's important to do both things.
And so we'll be bringing also back the overall description.
Right, hopefully
so
next time.
Be able
Yes.
to, you know,
Have
better
some-
define.
Yeah, we,
I'm doing some fine tuning with input now, and we're gonna meet, and, so, we'll be coming back.
Right.
Yeah, I take all these points, I just wanna be careful that we, the funds are designated as such that we can keep track of them.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have some funds going to help people that get on early. You know, we've talked about other issues, and it's tempting to sort of commingle these funds. And I think however you guys decide to do it, I don't care that much, as long as they're well designated, so we can, they're for the intended purpose, and we can keep account of them.
I mean, there's various pieces of this whole piece, you know, portion of this project manager to put together, and then the other pieces, to Larry's point about where are other places we've said we want to help, be able to help people as well. So we have to be careful about how we designate it. Any other comments, questions? Okay, so new business, committee appointments, youth services.
I didn't know if you wanted any of the other groups to have an opportunity to ask any
Oh,
questions,
sorry.
or to.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dana wore a suit just for this.
I didn't see anyone moving, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Finance Committee, Dana DeCosta. I just wanted to say that the reason we created a second spreadsheet was just in terms of the article. When you get to, I think it's usually Article 8, maybe sometimes it's Article 9, the one that's no charge, and you're just explaining the capital plan to the people. This one's a little bit bigger and easier to read, and it's just simplified. The town administrator's tool is a great tool as we're going through it. This is just in the no charge article, it's easier to go through and explain. Kind of hoping this was an off year because we spent so much money last year. It's still some $6 million going out to debt, and it's still a big chunk of money, and the $10+ million we're paying for a lot of it too. So it's still almost $11 million. It's a lot of money, and we'll have to be really creative in how we fit it all in. That's my only comment at the moment.
Thank you very much.
I'm Rich Larius. I'm the chairman of the Capital Outlay Committee. Two comments. One, about 6% of what the recommendation by the town administrator, the committee can't vote on and can only make comment on, and that's the money that's being directed or hopefully appropriated by the Community Preservation Fund, okay? So we support the funding for the project, but if it doesn't get funded, you're going to get almost $700,000 off of this plan. The second thing is the plan stands as it stands today. Whenever town meeting is in May or April, this might be different. So we've included the placeholders, quote unquote, the years out, because we think it's important to see that things are going to come up like $2 million, $1.2 million, you know, the CWP or whatever coming out in later years. So it's a living document. By charter, we have to put it in today. By charter, January 7th, something else has to happen. But the letter of the law says that, the spirit of the law says it's going to change. I just want to make that comment. Okay,
Thank you, Rich.
And thanks to the members, and Dana, and the other finance, Angelo, and Our guys, thank them.
And the other guys.
Thank you. And we do, we thank all of you, because we know it's a lot of time and energy, and again, number crunching, it's not easy work. And of course, it's a moving target, so we get it. Thank you. Okay, new business, committee appointments, youth services. Don?
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair, that we appoint Meredith Henderson to a full position on the Youth Services Consultation Committee with a term to expire 6/30/21. That we appoint Patricia Stackhouse on the Harwich Center Initiative Committee to a full position to expire 12/31/19. And Ron Dalgalo to the Board of Health for an unexpired term, full position to expire 6/30/19.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
The Board of Health now has 5 members.
Excellent. Do you want,
It's hard.
do you want to take these in order, or do you want to go to the license renewals? I just don't want to forget to address the license renewals.
We'll just take them in order and then. do
Take them in
the
order and
two.
go to license after, okay. Appointment of the Harwich's representative to the Cape and Vineyard Electrical Cooperative, and we'll take note of what Leo told us earlier this evening as well, so. Don?
I'd move to appoint him to the unexpired term that exists within the town to
Second.
CVAC.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Provincetown Community Television, PTV, letter of support, vote to sign. This is in relation to the presentation we had, I think it was last week. And I did ask at our agenda meeting, just to make sure we vetted that, to make sure it was actually, the whole presentation that we heard, it was vetted. So, is there, and so I guess I'll ask if anyone has any other comments on it or questions. Don?
Just as a comment, I mean, it just seems like through the years, when it suits their purposes, they want to be a regulated utility, and when it doesn't suit their purposes, they act like they're in the free marketplace. But when Comcast rolled into town, they were talking about being a friendly, supportive, community-engaged company. One of the first things they did was shut down the news all across Cape Cod. There was a news program, and it was actually informative, it was helpful. We all fund our public meetings in guaranteeing the access to the public through the money that these guys were given. And certainly, I'm sure nobody's going to get a rebate on their cable bill if they don't do this. And it's going to put us in a really horrible position because we have staff, we have expenses, everybody across the Cape has the same thing. I mean, I feel really strongly that this is an obligation, a citizen obligation on their part to fund, something that actually keeps the citizenry informed.
Thank you, Don. Any other comments?
Just to that end, I just want to let people know that there is a process in which to submit comments, and I think if the people in the general public want to submit comments, I think to say that we're not going to be able to potentially fund, or it's in kind, is going to create a real potential hardship if this were to go through, because right now, cable operations is funded through that franchise fee. So if people do have individual comments that they like to make, we have that on in the selectmen's packet as to how you go about submitting testimony.
Thank you, Chris. So we will go ahead and, can I get a motion? Do I need a motion? Don't I need a
Yeah,
motion?
we've come this
Technically,
far.
I mean, we had the presentation. Okay,
I move that we approve the Provincetown Community Television, PTV, letter of support and vote to sign.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contracts, oh, sorry, no, the liquor licenses, see, I almost stumped up. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a natty point with me, but these things are really important, and they shouldn't just kind of shovel through on the consent agenda. So with that, first one is, I move to approve the applications for annual 2019 liquor license renewals as listed in our packet, along with any restrictions noted, which shall be placed on the individual licenses.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
We talked about bringing back on the outdoor one, we talked about bringing back that 150 feet in several cases. And I think it's important that we do that. I think it's, obviously, we're gonna vote these tonight, but the board, at least I have an interest in extending that 150-foot, because in every hearing I've been to, it seems that if the wind's blowing in a certain direction, there's a violation. If it's not blowing in that direction, there isn't. And I think that we need to come up with something that's a little easier for the police department to follow.
Agreed. Yeah, we'll bring that back. So,
But these certainly do at least hold the current restrictions
yes,
this way.
right. That's really the bylaw.
This is for the liquor licenses. We'll do the general application licenses
Right.
afterwards.
Okay, so
But if I may just follow up, it's within our power to change these regulations at any time we bring it into a,
okay, so we've got, who seconded it?
I did.
Larry did.
Larry did.
Don
Okay, so it's
motioned.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the applications for the annual 2019 general license renewals as listed in our packet, along with any restrictions noted, which shall be placed on the individual licenses.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Contracts, cooperative agreement between Barnstable County and the town of Harwich to perform all dredge-related work for Round Cove. Authorize the chair to sign. Chris, do you want to, or
Yeah,
John?
Madam Chair, maybe I'll start, and then Harbor Master's in the room, so he can answer any detailed questions. I guess my apologies initially here, because we tried to get the contract, when we do work with Barnstable County, we do utilize Barnstable County's contracts, we do utilize the state contracts, and we have works with other municipal entities. In this case, the dredge equipment really kind of depends upon the weather, depends upon availability. We had hoped to have this on for last week because the work was done last week. We hope to have it on last Monday. So the work has been done in Round Cove to do that. So this is kind of a little bit after the fact in terms of the work getting completed. But we do want to just have the paperwork be finalized and the work be completed. You know, with the cold weather, we didn't want to risk losing the opportunity to have the dredge equipment here. So we did intend on trying to have this on for Monday, and then we would have been quite nicely lined up. But because we didn't get all the contract materials in with the county, it fell behind. But I am asking for the board to approve the contract with Barnstable County for the dredge work that was done at Round Cove.
Thank you, Chris. Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to be a pain in the neck about this, but the same thing is happening over and over. If you're going to make a recommendation, please put it in writing in the packet that I hereby recommend that. The verbal thing is just, it's missing the point, is we need to have each department head saying that they've done their thing, and at the very end, somebody has to say formally that I recommend that you award this contract.
We will update the form to have on there that I sign as procurement officer, and I also sign as town administrator that the project is recommended to the board.
With that, I move that we accept the recommendation and award the contract.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Michael?
Maybe John can answer. Good evening, John. Good evening. This was the maintenance dredging?
It is.
And did they go over, the contract's for 46,800, now that it's done, is it more than 46,000? I know you have plenty of money there.
Sure, we don't think so. We haven't done the post-dredge survey. We're estimating it's around 4,000. We put about 1,500 on Bay Road and another 2,500 on the barrier. That's the estimate, but once we get the post-dredge survey, but I don't think we'll come anywhere near that.
Okay, and both, you mentioned the two beaches that got replenished again?
Yes, Bay Road Beach, which is a public beach there, Pleasant Bay, and the barrier, east barrier arm of Wauquasit property there,
Okay,
where we're permitted to put sand.
coming out of the channel on the
Yes,
left-hand
sir.
side.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay. Moved and seconded, correct? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Old business, designation of exclusive use line between Harwich Elementary School and Cultural Center. This goes back a while. We talked about this, I think it was last,
It was actually at the last meeting.
last meeting, but no, previous to that, we had talked about it for a while. So we've been working on this, getting this line defined. And overall, I think we've got it in place, and we've got the corresponding materials to go with it that we did not have last week. So, do you want to do an overview on it again, or?
Maybe just as a follow-up, because we did do it last week, the town and Monomoy School are looking to have a more clear designation of the use of the fields relevant to the former middle school, now cultural center. So the agreement that lays out basically whatever's on one side of the line is that entity's obligation, whatever's on the other side is the other entity, with the idea that there's no reason why we can't operate mutually in terms of different projects, such as like Castle in the Clouds and so forth, if we wanted to partner up to do work to improve the site overall. Actually, Madam Chair, I think it came out from this board member as well as a member of the school committee that during hours of school operation, could we have where the students currently are on those fields continue to be on those fields? So I did look at some of the language that exists in the lease, and I kind of used a little bit of the language from that lease. And just item E, letter E actually addresses that concept of Monomoy shall have peaceful and quiet use of the fields on the Harwich side exclusively during school hours for student use to facilitate the education program of students. Harwich shall not schedule events on the fields during normal school hours. I think that, and I kind of took the wording out of the lease that they use that quiet enjoyment of peaceful and quiet use. So I just took that out of the lease document.
Larry?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Chris. On your item E, I like what you've done. I wonder on the last sentence where Harwich shall not schedule events, would it be better to put an out there in case, unless it's mutually agreed or something of that kind, in case something comes up? That's a very absolute statement, and are you with me?
I am with you. I just, we do have a section in here that there's nothing in this agreement, nothing in this agreement under item D shall prohibit Monomoy and Harwich from working together to allow each other use of the property and/or improvement to ground structures. So if there was something that was worked out by the recreation director,
That statement would
that would
supersede
cover
this
that.
statement?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was at least the thought process.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wasn't here last week, and I'm making a policy of not watching the meetings. But I do understand there was significant discussion, and I just want to assure people of a couple of things. First of all, when we were building Castle in the Clouds 22 years ago, had access to all of the blueprint books for the properties, massive. And I can assure you, even internally, the school always delineated a lot line between the middle school and the elementary school, which is precisely on the, it's exactly what the blueprints show. It shows it on the other side of the Castle in the Clouds as you head towards what is the asphalt hockey court. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we keep devolving into talking about the kids as if they're different kids. When they're in school, they're Monomoy kids. When they're not in school, they're Harwich kids. And the MCLP is yet a third category of kids. They're the same kids. No one is going out there with a jackhammer to take up the asphalt hockey court. No one. No one's suggesting that we radically change the agreement. This is all like a play nice thing so that everybody knows who has primary jurisdiction over this stuff. But nobody is telling any of our kids that they can't do stuff because they're categorized as something else at 8 o'clock than they are at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, John. Is there any other comments?
I only have one, and it's on A, and I'm not hung up on it. I think this is a great agreement. Thank you, Chris. I guess two questions. On A, the line is to be used to designate use only and is not to be intended to be used as a property boundary. Why don't we want a property boundary?
We actually run into a potential issue where if you divide the property, then we could have frontage issues for the cultural center versus frontage issues for the Harwich Elementary. So we're just trying to avoid any legal entanglements.
Thank you.
Ed, did you have a question?
Also, it's the size of the property that if we wanted to separate it officially, it's a long process with the Cape Cod Commission. When you start splitting large parcels.
Larger parcels, okay, yeah. Okay, that,
I'm
you're
good.
happy
Yeah,
with
that's
that? Okay, so, oh, Sharon, go ahead, Sharon. Just identify yourself.
Yes, Sharon Stout, taxpayer. I have a comment and a question, just for your information, not to be argumentative, but the former school committee members of the Monomoy School walked out on that land. I think it was in 2013, it may have been 14, but somewhere in there, and divided a line. And that line at that time was divided so many feet behind the school, the middle school, former middle school, and it went straight across. And so that was the recommendation. I don't know if it ever got to you, of the school committee, Terry Russell, Ed Jaworski, myself, I forget who the other one was. But that did happen at one point. My question is that I don't understand this quiet. Are you asking the kids at recess and field day to be quiet, or is it supposed to be quiet so the kids have enjoyment?
No, so quiet
of
enjoyment
art.
is a standard term in a lease in terms of allowing people to use a property. If you were a tenant, if you had a residential lease, it would be a quiet enjoyment, say after 10 at night and before 8 in the morning. It just means that there's a certain amount of time that, people can intend to use that specific space. So you couldn't say that kids could use it at midnight.
Oh, okay.
So
I wasn't understanding that because it wasn't jiving with me thinking about kids.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
really.
do appreciate Mr. Howell's comment about it's the same kids. My concern is just that the kids can use it.
And we have no intention of altering the use of that, as we're trying to make very clear in this agreement. And we're, to Michael's point last week about trying to avoid times and such, which is a good idea, because things change all the time. So we would rather it be a general use.
Oh, the other thing was that we often, or we have had in the past, running clubs and that type of thing after school. And since I'm thinking about this in terms of 50 years, but I guess we're redoing this every 5 years. A soccer after-school activity, that still could be used by the kids, or it couldn't be?
Yes, it will be used, as long as they're coordinating everything and all efforts are, everybody's on the same page. So there's no issue with trying to take away the time for the kids. Michael?
Yeah, I would clarify that by saying coordinate. I think if the school has that intention,
Right.
the school will have to work with Carolyn now, because Carolyn's, or the town administrator, would be in charge of the town hours of that building. So if we schedule something for after school and the running club needs the unit, we really need to know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Donna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to put a summation on this. Is the first couple things. There can't be an agreement by a bunch of folks who walk around the property on their own. There would have had to be a mutual agreement, and there was no such agreement. That's the first thought. The second thought was the middle school was the high school. That's the first building. That was there originally, before there was an elementary school. So it's pretty clear that that property is associated with that building.
That's okay. I just wanted to kind of clarify, because I was here in December of 13, and I think one of the first tasks I had was to, if the town wanted to sell that building for housing, where would you draw the line? So there definitely were maps that were done of where that line would be, but no action was ever taken on it. So there was material that was floated, but there was no action that ever materialized.
Thank you, Chris. Ed?
That was part of my point, you know, we were trying to come up with a line because we were theoretically going to dispose of it. We're not currently, and until we change at some future time to do that, it doesn't seem necessary to establish a line because essentially the town still retains the underlying ownership of all the property anyway, so.
Thank you, Ed.
The other issue is, in terms of coordination over the use of the fields, wouldn't it be more appropriate, because, I believe the other people that schedule things on the field is the youth and rec,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
for sports
just-
activities.
In the building itself would be Carolyn. I do envision having Eric Beebe. I did have a conversation with Eric, our recreation director, to do the scheduling.
Right.
Based on the fields themselves.
And that was the point of leaving it more general in terms so that we could coordinate amongst all parties that would be using that area, so. Don?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve as a board the intermunicipal agreement for the designated property, subject to the approval of the Monomoy Regional School District.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me. Okay. Mass Works Infrastructure Program update.
I think, Madam Chair, at the last meeting, I just alluded to this, and I don't think I had that in the packet, so I wanted to just put it in the packet. I have not yet heard from the state. They had said they were going to make an outreach and try to walk us through what we can do to improve the application. I did get a phone call from somebody, do you have a Plan B? So, yeah, I always try to have a Plan B, so we're exploring what our options are, but we do want to kind of work with MassWorks. Either we'll see if we can retool that and resubmit that, or if we can do something with we've had some pretty good success with Seaport Council on some of their grant opportunities and see if we can explore that again. So we're in the exploration stage. So we will look, you know, I think it's an item of significant importance. So we will continue to see. Matt Hart also alluded to the possibility of CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, federal funds that have specifically been identified for ADA purposes. So that is something that now there's an opportunity for us to put in for that we may not have had previously.
That's good news. Don?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It just seems rather odd, though,
Excuse me.
that the state came, you had the lieutenant governor come down here to tout this great renovation of the harbors, and we basically have a boardwalk to nowhere because we presumed that they would see the value of integrating this into the greater community because they recognize that this was supposed to be a renaissance in that area. It just seems odd that they would blow it off.
But you did get communication that they were relooking and trying to identify additional monies, correct? In terms
But they
of-
gave us a grant for the
No,
other part
I
of this, which
understand
is
that.
the odd thing.
But
And
I'm
they
just
said they
saying.
would have a discussion with us about it. So
Right.
we haven't had it yet, so I don't know what they're.
That was gonna be my question. Do you have a time frame for the discussion and,
Can't come soon enough from my perspective, but
no feedback?
I'm not the guy
yet?
driving the bus on this one. So we'll see what the state says. I think inquiries have been made, though. I mean,
If
we are
you-
high on their
Be
list.
nice if, can you keep us informed of what the thoughts and deficiencies were and what we've learned from this?
Absolutely. And if, you know, if I have the date, you know, early enough, I'm happy to, if one of you want to,
Okay.
you know, join, or a couple, you know, happy to invite to the meeting.
Thank you, Chris. And now we'll go to the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to make this quick. I just, on the explanation of the FY19 tax rate, I know we kind of had that presentation on setting the tax rate. I just thought it would be kind of interesting to go through a little bit of the numbers. So the proposed tax rate is 867, so that's the tax rate for this current fiscal year. The valuation did go up by 6.96, so overall the value of the community was increased. The difference of the valuation and levy limit is approximately 6.61, which decreased the tax rate by 13 cents. The impact of the levy limit less exclusions equals about 44 million. The decrease in the tax rate from 2018 by about $1.07. The impact of capital exclusion, we don't have any capital exclusions in 19, so there was no impact. The impact of debt exclusion was $5.3 million, which had an increase to the tax rate of 94 cents. So overall, the tax rate decreased by 13 cents, bringing it down to 867, because basically the value outpaced the spending on it. But just, I thought that, just to give a little bit more form and function to that would be helpful. Just a update
Chris?
on,
Or Julie,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. Oh, excuse me.
Excuse me. Craig Chadwick, Harwich Center. Just a question about the tax rate. Was there any conversation or discussion about not dropping it, trying to keep it as equal, so not dropping 13 cents, let's say, cutting it in half and dropping it 6 cents? Because we have so much expenses coming down the road, and I think I heard you say earlier that we should be expecting another big dollar request maybe this year, next year, annual town meeting for the Dennis Yarmouth Harwich Sewer Initiative. Excuse me. Not sure if that's something that we can do or have already considered.
yeah, in answer to the question, it's really no. What town meeting sets as the funding level is what we set as the funding level, so the financing plan of the town is one. So that goes up each year. And then the level of the value, that if the value is outpacing the level of spending, then it's just a byproduct of what that number comes in at. So the fact that we're a valuable community from a property perspective, that people are a desirable community, and the cost of the housing keeps going up is a marketplace issue and not something that we really can control. So we do tend to tax to the full level that we're allowed, so there's no additional capacity in that.
Don?
Yeah, I'd like to give the less technical explanation here. The town has a bucket of money that it spends on the overall budget. You're only allowed to increase that by 2.5% under law. When the values of the houses go up, the price of the per thousand goes down on the tax to match up, because it has to come out to that bucket amount at the end. So there's no way to bank money. You're constrained by what you got plus 2.5%.
Ed, did you have a comment?
Basically what Don said.
Okay.
Thank you.
I apologize if I was too technical. I try to live this stuff every day. The accessory dwelling units, planning board status, that material, the draft that was presented, I think went to planning board. Planning board asked for input on the two bylaws from special counsel, Adam Costa, so he did get back with some comments, so that is still progressing, just to give the board an update on that. Just for folks at home, for the town hall holiday hours of operation, Monday, December 24th, town hall will be closed all day. Tuesday, Christmas Day itself, town hall will be closed. Wednesday, December 26th through Friday, December 28th, town hall will be open until 4 p.m. And then on Monday, December 31st, town hall will be open from 8:30 to 4. And on Tuesday, January 1st, New Year's Day, 2019, town hall will be closed for New Year's Day. And then Wednesday, January 2nd, town hall will resume 8:30 to 4 p.m. It should be 5 days a week in terms of town hall hours. So just as a reminder to folks on that, if they're planning on making tax payments or what have you, what the status is. Item D is we did put together an advertisement for the interim school committee member with Monomoy. With the departure, there was a vacancy, and the process to fill the vacancy is to have an interim member that would fill the spot until the election in May, and would be done by a joint board meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Harwich members of the Monomoy school system. And I think that we have 3 applicants. I think we have actually received in 3 applicants. So there are
He's got better
applicants.
information.
Okay,
I
I'm hearing
think it's
4.
4, yeah.
So the man with his ear to the ground is more on top of that than I am. And then I did mention already about the Lothrop tank and the work that we're having there, or the issues. I happened to attend a meeting this afternoon with the Monomoy School over at the Harwich Elementary, and there is an opportunity to apply for what they call Safe Routes to School grants to do sidewalk improvements around the Harwich Elementary School. So we are going to try to put that grant materials together. I will try to draft a letter for the board to do for support. We literally just had a meeting this afternoon, so I'm hoping for the meeting on the 17th to have a letter for the board to vote to support that initiative. Really what the focal point of that would be is to have Sisson, Maine, and what's the street that the school's in South, to have that network be, make sure that the crosswalks and the access points, those crosswalks are all ADA accessible for kids, so create a safe route. So we are looking at putting together that grant. And again, a new grant that came out from the state specifically targeted to having safe walking areas for kids to be able to walk to and from school. And elementary schools only. They did not allow middle or high schools. So that is something that we'll put that grant together and see if we have any results.
Michael?
That concludes my comments this evening.
Chris, just on that, it'd be nice to see them enforce the no parking on the sidewalks that already exist in front of the elementary school. Every time there's a function at that school, there's 15 to 20 cars parked on the sidewalk. Doesn't seem safe to me.
It's kind of interesting that they limit it to elementary, as if
Yeah, it's
middle
like the
school and
others are
high school.
expendable, right?
Yeah. I guess because they hit the teen years, they think they might be able to be picked up.
Teenagers, they're gonna do whatever they want anyways.
That's true.
I have one question on the departmental reports. And that is the treasury report has the payroll jumped from 1.2 to 1.65. So is that unusual circumstance or a seasonal payment, or just trying to, just caught my eye? Are you with-
I'll check. I don't have there are some times in which, like debt payments are due a certain time of year. And
I'm sure there's an explanation. It's just as a 400 and some thousand jump.
On the payroll.
Yeah, I mean, it could be some type of seasonal payment going on. I just caught my eye. Like to learn.
Okay.
Thank you,
I'll
Larry.
ask.
Selectmen's report, Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's going to be a little esoteric. Free cash. I looked over the last 5 years of it. And by its very definition, it's money that you didn't spend in your prior budget that rolls over unassociated so that you can spend it in the next year after it gets certified. Given our seeming inability to do things like the IT position and a bunch of other things, I'd love to have a discussion about how we're generating like $3 million worth of free cash and where it came from and where it might be utilized better, as opposed to, once it gets to free cash, we buy stuff with it. But it's actually within that 2.5 that we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Good point. Yep.
So I'd love to have that agenda item at some point.
Ed?
Well, with the coming of the meeting where we'll be interviewing candidates for the school committee position, there'll be 8 members voting, and apparently we have 4 candidates. We'll presumably interview them, and then it'll come down to the members nominating the candidates that they feel are their choice to take the position for the time until the next election. In Paris, when we've done this, you you interview the candidates, and then you nominate whoever gets a nomination, then goes to a vote, and you go through a series of taking a vote and dropping out the sort of low vote getter each time. And it, you know, as opposed to when we did the replacement for the Assembly of Delegates position, it was sort of whoever got their nomination first, that's the only one that was, you were allowed to vote for, up or down, which, you know, I don't think that the results of that would have come out any different, but for the two members who had expressed support of someone else than the person who won, it would have allowed them the ability to vote in favor of their candidate rather than having to vote against.
Right.
I think that's a much more civil practice.
Okay, we'll rely on you.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I felt the same way with the water commissioner. It was, first come got voted on with very little or no discussion about the others. So we need a better,
Better system.
better system that
Yeah,
gives a
agreed.
fair.
It's in essence an election that the 8 of us will be having
Right.
as a proxy for the member, the electorate at large. And so it needs to, you know, just like going into a ballot box, everybody who's been nominated, you get a chance to vote for.
Thank you, Ed. Michael?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay. I just wanted to ask members, so the Housing Institute wrap-up, that is, I think it's 12/19 next week? So is anybody able to attend? I had that on my calendar, but I have.
Let me check. I was hoping to attend that, Bob.
Yeah, I was too, but now I can't, so just want to make sure that we're
The
represented.
Housing Institute wrap-up is, we had the Housing Institute a year ago.
Right.
They had the same program again
Yeah.
this year, and they're
Right.
looking for feedback
Right.
from that. There probably were about 4 or 5 of us from the town that participated in it. I actually did not, I'm not available to go to that wrap-up,
Yeah.
but I think we have a couple people. Charlene, I think, is gonna go.
Oh, is she gonna go? Okay,
And
good.
I think Evan was gonna also attend, just to provide feedback on how the classes went.
I'm always gonna try and make it.
Okay, great, great.
I think it's a good opportunity.
No, it's a
to-
great, yeah, I wanted
Yeah,
to
was
go,
just
but
gonna
I
just
can't
wanted,
go.
because, as Chris says, some of us made it to the first time. I'd be
Yeah.
interested in see what the response was the second time around.
I know, yeah, definitely. So, okay, great, so we'll be represented. Ed?
And, I forgot, under the comments, this Wednesday at 6 o'clock at Barnstable High School, the Army Corps is holding the last of their 4 hearings on the bridge plan, or I'm not sure if there's a plan, but to take input from the public. If anybody's available, I'm going to try and make it. And then on Friday at 7:30 in Sandwich is the monthly meeting of the Selectmen and Councilors Association.
All right, thank you.
I still get no notice of that.
You don't.
can have mine.
I sent it out again, and I have your,
You must have.
I must have a
right.
bad,
Yeah, bad
I'll
email
have
or
to,
something.
I'll have to go under it and check the
Check
email
it,
to make
yeah.
sure. So.
Okay, can I get a
Move
motion?
to adjourn.
Thank you. So we are adjourned. So put that bylaw back on.